Alright, here we go. Last example, and this is a tricky one. Don't they always say save the most tricky ones for last, or was it save the best for last? Well, maybe it's both, right? Maybe it's both the best and the most tricky one at the same time. So, yen, by just glancing at all of these for a split second, we can already tell there's probably not going to be a whole lot of flow on this one. It's not going to be a super weak or a super strong one. Regardless, we still have to do our work, do all the numbers. So if we were to take the same date again, around 10 to 12th of March, we're running into a bit of a problem here, because let me draw that on USD yen here. So if I would draw a line here, because then we go lower right, but we come right back, and then we come up hard to the guy that started here, and then we come down, bounce on that support and go higher. So this would actually be for yen weakness, but are we looking at enough data here? What's the deal here? It's not very clear, because both these sellers and these buyers, they're all strong, and they seem to be equally strong here. So maybe we need to go further back, but then what is the case? Range. So this one, 0. Swiss franc yen, we've already covered this one in another group in an earlier video. So same thing here. I can't really go to the 10th of March or the 12th of March, because what is that going to tell me? Just strong up, comes right back, goes relatively fast up again, comes right back, goes right back up, comes right back lower. What's happening here? Well, to me, this is also quite clearly in a range. So that's the guy that started it right there, that last buyer, and this is just a poke out, holding the range and now poking out a little bit. Okay, so 0 as well. Then euro yen. Going to, what did we say, 10th or 12th of March? I'm not sure here. So we go lower, but then price comes up and goes up in small swings, goes way up to the guy that started this, reacts from it, but also holds on top of that support. Are we buyers because of these guys, or is this a seller because of that guy, or should we take more data and that's the guy that started and we're sellers because of that, or should we even take more data and that's the guy that started it and all of this is a fake below here? I'm not really sure here either. So this one, to me, I think we have to change our view and look at the most recent data here and say that probably this is yen weakness right now. But I wouldn't blame you if you were to say this is also neutral. So it's either a -1 or a 0. And I'm going to tell you already, it's not that important what it actually is. And you may be thinking right now, well, Ramo, what the hell are you telling me? Or isn't it very important what I'm doing? Yes, it is. But I will explain later why I can already tell for this group that it's not that important. And trust me, it will make sense later on. So for now, I'm going to label it a -1. I think it's an upflow, and that's both because price is holding above this guy that started, and there's also in this buyer's territory here. So I have both those things going for me. I think this was a faker going down, and this was potentially also a faker going down, although it was holding a little bit long there, and it actually bounced down as well another time, but it could also be a faker. So for that reason, I'm going to put a -1 on that. Okay, so going to the next one, that is a pound yen. So from here we moved up but came right back, and then it didn't really do much after that. So I would say this one, very, very clearly, we're in a range, 0. Nothing at all is happening here. Sorry, I could have drawn a better 0. Let me correct that. There we go. Still not going to win me any art contest, but it'll do. So Aussie yen, this one I think is the most clear out of all of them. Price is just going up, and it's going up from around there. If we take that same date that we did from all of the pairs, you don't have to, from all of the groups, sorry, you don't have to do it from the same date from all of the groups. It is probably convenient to do so very often, but you don't always have to do it, as long as you take roughly the same date within one currency group. Okay, so Aussie yen, even if we were to include more data, we're still buyers, so -1 here, as yen is the second currency in the currency pair. Then CAD yen is a bit of a mess, I would say, as well. But let's see what it is doing exactly. So going to that same date again, around here, we moved down, I think. Guy that started is sitting there. But then price came right back, held in that area, in the money spot if you will, and then it went slightly higher, but it's back in that area again. Not sure what to think of this either. So to me, it seems like potentially we are in a range. Even if we were to include more data, so that's the guy that started it, that would be, well, let me clear it up a little bit before I draw any more. So that's the guy that started it. This is the breach line, then went down, came back up, went down further, came right back up. Okay, maybe from this point of view it's a +1 for yen, but I'm not sure at all, because these buyers, they seem equally strong as these sellers coming in, and they're not that far off from the breach line. In fact, they're in the breach line area, and they're not far off relatively from the guy that started. So here again, I'm inclined to say it's either a 0 or it's a +1. At the moment, I would actually go with the +1. Not 100% sure. As I said, both would be correct, but for now I would go with the +1. Okay, so far lots of confusion, right? But I'll explain later why it's not important. So let's have a look at the last pair here, New Zealand yen. And you could argue, well, clearly this is a range. It starts here, goes up, down, up, down, up, down, and it starts to not reach the top anymore. Well, that's one way of looking at it. Another way would be, okay, let's have a look at our same date that we had again, around 12th of March. So then we would very clearly be a seller, right? And if you want to be consistent and include the same amount of data that we're including from all of these, or most of these, then you could also start to look from around here. And then the last real buyer that we had is that guy, probably, because he's the only one that where price actually went higher, even though it spiked down, but that's a faker. It spiked down and then it started to hold after that. So that's the guy. And then after that, price crashes and then it starts to hold below. So I would draw my line like this. So I know it's a little bit confusing, but that's my last guy that started. So that's an interesting price range. Maybe I've drawn the line a little bit too high. Let me draw a little bit lower like that. Okay, now I've added a really nice curve to it. Okay, that's better. So that's the last guy that was a buyer, right? A successful one. So it goes up, spikes down, but moves back up and then holds. Then faker down again, price keeps on holding, keeps on holding, keeps on holding, faker down again, and then it crashes down. Could be a faker, but then it starts to move down again and it starts to hold. So then that guy is taken out, and I would say it is actually a seller's flow right now. If you want to take it the fast way, then just use that. But if you want to use consistent, the same amount of data, then you have to do it a little bit more elaborate. I hope that makes sense. I want to put a little bit more effort into this New Zealand yen, because New Zealand yen was also one of the pairs that were covered from the New Zealand group, and I want to illustrate that in each group you still have to do the analysis all over again, and you have to do it according to what that whole group is saying. Okay, so in a nutshell, it's still a +1 for yen here, and now let's do the calculation. So 0, another 0 means the sum is still 0. Then let's take the -1 here. So 0 minus 1 is -1. With a 0, still -1. With a 0 makes -2. With a +1 makes -1. And in the end, with another +1 makes 0. So this one is completely neutral. And yes, as I said, we could have guessed this from the beginning, but obviously we want to have at least a rough estimate. We can't say, well, maybe it's a +3, maybe it's a -3. That would still make a little bit of difference, as you will find out in the upcoming lessons. So having a 0, or either it could have been a +1 or a -1 as well, that's a little bit more accurate. And why wasn't it so important, as I mentioned a few times, whether we do this one, you know, so in a way that we're 100% sure, or this one in a way that we're 100% sure? Well, we always want to focus on the pairs or on the currencies that are super strong or super weak, right? So whether this one is going to be one stronger or one weaker than it would be if we had a slightly different analysis, it's not going to make a world of difference. As I just said, if this one would have been a +1 or a +- or a -1, sorry, it wouldn't make a big difference at all. It's still neutral, and it's still very close to 0. See, it's a difference if by doing one analysis you're getting a +3 and then the guy next to you is getting a -3. That's a different story. Then either one of you, or maybe both, need to look into it a little bit deeper. But small differences are fine, and that's also what you'll see if you have the FX meter, the currency strength meter, or in the lead community you're looking at the strength numbers. You will sometimes see that the numbers that we at Forex Watchers or Urban Forex do, that they are slightly different from yours, and that's completely fine as long as they're not the complete opposite of what you have. So if at Forex Watchers we have a +5 and you have a -3, then there's something wrong with your numbers, and generally you're looking at too much data or not enough data. So try to, there's no way of saying, well, look at 1 month of data or something like that, but try to be fairly consistent, and always look at roughly the same amount of data. And why I'm saying that you can't say, well, always look at 1 month of data, is because the size of the swings is just not always the same. Sometimes the swings are bigger than other times, and they take up more candles to do one swing. So you have to be aware of that as well. But again, if your numbers are just slightly different, don't worry about it. We also use a few in-house techniques that unfortunately I can't share, that are on top of this approach. So we start with the same approach, and then we have our a few small in-house techniques that maybe change the numbers 10 to 15 or sometimes 20% than what they would normally be. But that's just for a little refining on our end. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Sorry for making this video too long. I'm going to end it right now, and then we're going to go to the next week. I hope all of this makes sense. If not, I will see you in the comments. All right. Have a good one. See you next week.